Oh, testing, testing, one, two, three. Hello, bird nerds, habitat gardeners. I'm back after a week off. You can probably hear the voice is a bit rough. I'm Grant. I'm a bird nerd. I'm also a horticulturist, and I'm coming to you from Naarm, uh, the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people in Melbourne, Australia. Yeah, rough week with the bronchitis. So yeah, I really couldn't talk last week, so I wasn't able to come. Sorry. Today, if anyone's interested, I know it's footy finals time in Australia, and we're also in the end of uh, freedom of speech, apparently in the US and the UK to a lesser extent. And I mean, we've always had some limits on how we can say things here in Australia. But I don't think anyone wants to stop me talking about keeping pests out of the garden. But let's see. Uh, let's see. I I'm dealing with neighbours with cats that are unrestrained, and cats that are desexed, and I'm really wondering how to deal um, with the cats running wild. Um, Living in a group of units uh, makes the trapping option potentially very well. Let's just say it could potentially be dangerous doing that. And and I did book a cat trap and from the council, but I backed out on that because some of my neighbours are pretty scary people. Uh, so I've resorted to the age old. Anytime I see a cat, I mean Shadow hates them, so he's always barking and chasing them out. But the fact is that they're not only doing damage or stopping birds coming in, and if there ever happen to be mammals around coming into my place, they're also impinging on all of the neighbours as well. So anyway, we're just going on to the time-honoured uh, water jet treatment to try and discourage them from coming here, and I just keep ringing the council about unregistered cats, and hopefully they'll come and deal with them. Uh, but I reckon it's pretty low um, on their priority list. Now, cats are one thing, but how do you deal with things you really don't want in your garden? Good morning, Charlie. How are you? How are things down in on the coast? What's happening in your garden? Let's make it a bit chitty chatty this morning because I'm still feeling far less than 100%. Um, deterrent spray. The cat deterrent spray works until the cats work out that it doesn't hurt them. Uh, they don't like the smell, right? But if there's only one access point into your yard, or if there's one spot you're trying to keep them away from, it will work. But if they're using your fence as a thoroughfare, if they're using your guttering and um, just basically hanging around in sort of shared common areas, you can't really do anything about them. Um, uh, you know, they don't. Yeah, they don't like citrus. but they hang out in the mandarin tree, right? They don't like citrus, but the mandarin tree full of mandarins at the moment. But it's the easy way to get from one place to another, and they just tolerate it because they know that they're not going to be stuck in it. If you can, if you can hit them with citronella spray, well, that might work. But who's who's out who's out manning the barricades all day every day? I'm putting the onus back on the council and see what they do. Let's see, Charlie. Windy, yes, windy September. Uh, Lots of blossoms. What's blooming in your garden, Charlie, and nearby? Are all the Bursaria spinosas in flower around your neck of the woods at the moment? Good morning, Twitch too. Nice to see Twitch on board. Um, let me throw this in too. There's a whole lot of updates coming to YouTube, and I'm going to try and take advantage of them and change up what is going on with the bird emergency and habitat gardening, and see if we can get a bit more penetration because it's everything's been very, very stagnant for a long time. So we've got to change things up, and I hope I'll be doing a lot more collaborations with with people in the environment protection as well as, excuse me, bird research space, and revisiting a lot of people, a lot of previous guests, and doing some a bit more tourism. I gotta say, I'm finding it with the climate um, report. What was it actually called? I watched some of the Senate hearings about the readiness, Australia's readiness, um, and Professor Richard Dennis. I think I'm calling him Professor. Is that in error? I think Dr. Richard Dennis from the Australia Institute, economist from the Australia Institute. It's looking grim, looking grim. Anyway, uh, Charlie says, yeah, yeah, the onus should be on the owners, but they don't give a fuck, right? They really don't give a fuck, and um, they they seem to be the kind of people that would do legitimate damage to things. Uh, yeah, so I would prefer if the council just found the cats, and then they could bitch about the council being the Nazis or something, you know. Yeah, what else you got there, Charlie? Tons of wattle flowering, yes, of course. It's native orchids. Now, what have you got? Have you got the predominantly yellow native orchids, or have you got the little pink ones or the green ones? What, um, like, have you got the little sort of predominantly yellow and brown sort of donkey orchids? Such a good place area for native orchids down there in South Gippsland. Um, I used to always try and protect um, the areas that I found in on other people's. Like often when I'd be walking on undeveloped blocks, and find a uh, patch of orchids, and I'd always sort of peg them and put um, some cord or something around them, so that when their absentee owners would come down, they might notice that there was something special there. Rarely did I get to talk to landowners and point them out, but yeah, hopefully just making them aware that they had a significant patch on their block. They might happen to be there just in one time. Okay. Purple ones. Now, Charlie, is the purple one actually an orchid or is it the stylidium? The stylidium graminifolium. Let me see if I can get a picture up. I suppose stylidium graminifolium is. I think it's in the Orchidaceae family. Is it? Let me let me get a let me get a picture of the stylidium graminifolium up, and we'll see if we can. Okay, share. I'm just going to share my. Come on, share the screen. Come on, here we are. Oops, there we are. Is that the? Is that the one? Is that the one? Um, that's the pink one I used to see all the time uh, in East Gippsland. Uh, and yeah, I understood you said there was one with white flowers. Um, um, so I'll take that down now. There we go. There we are. So uh, stop the screen share. There we are. Back to normal. Um, Off the top of my head, I don't know what the white one would be, um, but that Stylidium graminifolium is really common um, in wooded and grassland sort of areas uh, in so much of well, all over the country, really. Um, Let me see what I can find. So the yellow and brown one is the dense leek orchid. Uh, um, oh, there's the white one. Is that? Sorry for the silence, folks. I'm just having a look at so many of them in South and East Gippsland. Um, there are piles. There are absolutely piles. Um, and it depends also whether you've got um, the fringe orchids, but we're not going to do plant ID on a live stream like this. Uh, oh, a small plant. Here we go. It's a small plant growing in hanging baskets. Okay. Well, if it's growing in hanging baskets, it might be one of the dendrobiums. Uh, I thought you were talking about native orchids growing out in the bush or whatever, but no. So sounds to me like you've got a dendrobium. Like there's hundreds of species, native species of the dendrobiums, and like the Cooktown orchid, which is pretty famous, is one of those, and they do grow really, really well in hanging baskets. The other thing, which is actually a succulent, the zygo cactus, can be flowering around now, and that's ideal for hanging baskets. And the eastern spinebills and do absolutely love them too. So I'm glad you've got the eastern spinebills hanging out at your place. Um, yeah, I have seen reports that there are some native orchids growing around here we've got this long linear reserve which follows uh, uh, the big power transmission lines, but I've never seen any of the native orchids around here. Um, so Charlie says, got some in the bush growing in the ground. Yeah, well, if you're lucky enough to have them, treasure them. Um, I I moved a patch of stylidiums, the one I showed earlier on, um, that were in the way of a um, irrigation line that was going to be trenched in on a farm, and they actually took really well to being transferred into pots with their own soil, and then I divided them and really tentatively, like I would only divide them once and then pop them into a mix of local soil and orchid media, and they did well. Um, so um, I'm not suggesting anyone does that, like takes them out of the wild, unless you are actually saving them from being um, dug up, or if there's a fence line or something going through them. Uh, you can transplant them. They do transplant. Anyway, let's get back on topic. Do I sound a bit blocked? I feel a bit blocked today. Um, so the biggest pests that people tend to find in their habitat gardens are invasive species like sparrows, starlings, blackbirds, um, and the best way to you can't really keep them out. So it's important that people understand you can't really keep them out. What you can do is deter them from spending a lot of time in your garden. So for birds like blackbirds, um, you need to remove their favorite food sources if you have them. So if you have ligustrum, if you have like privet, if you have a lot of those ornamental berries, um, uh, you you want to be replacing those plants. And here's where the uh, where the fundamental principles and design principles come into your garden, and why everyone's garden is a little bit different. If you are trying to change an established European traditional style sort of cottage or English garden style into a more wildlife friendly style, um, my thoughts would be first that you get some alternative food plants in for your native birds as quick as possible before you do any great uh, changes to design. Get some things like syzygiums or Elaeocarpus, some grasses, native grasses, um, some long flowering, easy to manage grevilleas and banksias in the ground quickly so that you develop a food source for your local birds. And then, as quick as possible, remove any ornamental plants that you have that have um, fruity seeding bodies, cotoneasters, ligustrums. Uh, I mean, nobody should be growing lantanas, but lantanas. Um, if you're in the coastal areas, just make sure there's absolutely no bone seeds around. Get rid of all of those easy food choices for a bird like the blackbird. Indian miners also browse on that stuff too. Um, and then for your sparrows, this is really difficult. Sparrows are like really, really difficult because they will use nesting opportunities that your desired finches and small honey eaters will use too. You just need to be judicious in if they start to use a nest box or if they've found a space, interrupt them before they finish nest building. I know that means being very watchful and very aware, but that's the best thing you can do. Uh, Now, Charlie, here's a very good point. Charlie's removed lantana before, and you should do it in sections because fairy wren use it, and that's true, and that's kind of what I was saying at the start. When you come into a new garden, or if you're renovating it, like if you've just bought a new place and you know that you have thornbills and fairy wrens using a hedge or a dense thicket, and that dense thicket or hedge is made up of a plant that you know has significant environmental downsides, i.e., you might have a privet hedge. Well, start removing sections of the privet hedge and put in something native that will hedge. Um, Now, I should do a sheet on that, shouldn't I? Um, Suitable hedging plants uh, for the different climatic zones. Uh, that's really, really easy to do. You can hedge heaps of the callistemons, heaps of the melaleucas. You can the agonis. You can hedge. You can hedge the myoporums, you eriostemens. So lots of grevilleas will handle hedging. So uh, you're quite right there, Charlie, is that you don't want to remove all of the habitat that your your local birds are already using. And it's pretty crappy habitat, but it's all they've got, right? In a lot of cases. So you need to build up alternatives for them. And then you can start removing a weed species like lantana. Um, so planting, you should be planting before you, in a lot of cases, think you are ready to plant. sometimes you put plants in that will be sacrificial. Like, for instance, um, some of the acacias, some of the wattles that are really quick growing, they might not be the plants that you desire to have in your mature garden in 3 or 4 years' time, or 5 years, 6 years, 7 years' time. But if they're quick growing and they become a great refuge plant, and it means you can pull out some lantana or some bone seed, or some, maybe you've got cape ivy or something like that, that is providing refuge thickets now. Well, then plant some pioneer species. Plant some prickly acacias and some quick growing melaleucas or something like that, that will give that will provide the same opportunities for your local birds, so that you can remove the pest species and, use them in their environmental niche. Um, if they are a pioneer species, if they are a one of the first plants. I mean, coastal tea tree is a perfect example. Leptospermum lavigatum is a perfect example of this. That where there's disturbance in a coastal zone, often they're the very first things in. Now you can hedge them, you can cut them, you can clip them regularly, and they can provide very dense thickets. They might not be what you want a year or two down the track, but use them, and then you can gradually eradicate them and have your specimen plants or whatever, like your callicimans, your melaleucas, your whatever they might be. You can bring those in over time. But how do we stop the stuff getting the stuff you don't want getting in the first place? Mulch, 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 mulch. When it comes to the ground, uh, uh, here we go, Charlie. Charlie says wattles can be a great pioneer plant. Absolutely. Um, eh, yeah, I've look at my place in East Gippsland. We would occasionally have gangs come in, and gangs would eat the seed of two wattles that I had in my garden, and both of those are plants that I would call. Uh, uh, Both of those are things I would call pioneer species, and that is Acacia etiophylla, the Flinders Ranges wattle, and Acacia podalirifolia, which is the Mount Morgan wattle. I saw gangs on both of those. Good question here, Charlie. So if you've removed Cotoneaster, uh, wattle is a replacement. Wattle is a replacement if they're using the Cotoneaster, because some Cotoneasters are very dense. Some aren't. Some are more like an open shrub. Cotoneasters, if you have the small thicket building um, or thicket forming species, and hawthorn is another one like this too. Well, then a dense wattle like the prickly Moses will be a replacement. That's where your fairy wrens, your small honey eaters, your thornbills, your silver eyes can quickly get into and feel safe if they're under threat. Um, but wattles obviously are not a replacement for the food value of the Cotoneaster fruits. Um, so for gang food, um, so you've got gang. Now, this is this is something we did. I'm sure we did an episode on this. Uh, let me just check if there's anything. Um, I'm just going to check if there's anything more recent than when we did that episode. Uh, Okay, and I'm looking for Victoria. Uh, when's this one? Oh, okay. So this, uh, I think this is from the Canberra study that it's Mick Mulvaney, and I think I spoke to Mick about this. So um, let me see what the list tells us. Um, yeah, this is from the 2023. Um, I'll just have to. Okay, so um, now if we're wanting to eradicate the non-native berry sort of fruits that the um, that the gangangs have been recorded eating, so hawthorn and cotoneaster and pistachio are three of the top five of the berries with large seed fruit category, which is 21% of all of the foods um, uh, that were viewed. So this is a visual study of gangangs actually eating, and the native plants. There were 26 species in all. No, sorry, 36 species of all with berries with large seeds and small fruits. But the main species were hawthorn, which is Cratagious, Cotoneaster, the white cedar, or the white ash, which is often used as a street tree, which is Amelia, pistachio, which is a pistachio nut, and the narrow leafed G-bung, Persunia. Now, the white cedar, the Melia, the and the narrow leafed G-bung or Persunia are native plants. There are a number of Persunias that you could grow that would probably be suitable. Um, for cones and soft pods, cones are 10% of what they were observed eating. Soft pods were 9%, and wattle flowers and green pods of wattles were 7.5%. So not insignificant. And um, the native petrophile or the cone stick, Petrophile pulchella, was one of the um, soft pods that they liked. Um, the the cones, the Calitris enlitriana was the main native. The other ones were Arizona and Monterey and Mediterranean cypress. Um, so growing Calitris, and there are a couple of Calitris species that are suitable for um, southeast and northern Australia. I mean, obviously, southeast is where you want for the gangang, obviously. Um, so you can substitute. Uh, a, I remember from this study, and I'm just trying to have a quick look through. I seem to remember from this study that um, because cockatoos are quite long lived, that different gangs uh, exhibited quite specific taste preferences. Um, uh, Look, I might do a post later on about this and um, link to this study so you can read it yourself. One of the interesting things that I remember came out of this study was how much meat gangs ate, and from meat, I'm talking about things like sawflower larvae and grubs and things like that when they're pulling branches and trees apart. So um, they also consume a lot of eucalypts. That was the other thing I remember. Where was the percentage? 43% of of what they ate was eucalypt flowers, buds, nuts, and shoots. 80 eucalyptus species, 6 Corymbia species, and 4 Angophora species. So there's uh, the main species, Tasmanian blue gum, which is Eucalyptus globulus, sugar gum, which is Eucalyptus cladocalyx, of course, Cladocalyx nana as well, apple gum, which is Eucalyptus bridgiana, snow gum, Eucalyptus pauciflora, Sydney peppermint, which is Eucalyptus piperita, the red stringy bark, Eucalyptus macarinca, uh, silvertop ash, Eucalyptus cyberi, and the yellow gum, Eucalyptus leucoxylon. So they're the major species, but they consumed 80 species of eucalypt, 6 of Corymbia, and 4 of Angophora. So you got Angophora costata, which is readily available. Of course, the Corymbias, you've got the red flowering gum, you've got the lemon scented gum, you've got the spotted gum, just for starters. Um, I think the scribbly gum, I think, is now in Corymbia as well. So there's no shortage of options you can give them. Um, and then uh, I can't find. I thought there was a more exhaustive list of things, but whether they're eating Aleocarpus, like the blueberry ash, um, and syzygiums and whatnot, I'll have to read this. Uh, just having a look. Oh, this is in the different. Um, no, I'm not seeing any of those in the top. Yeah, and this was the interesting thing that gangs were not feeding in a proportion in the proportionality of the availability of the food, so that if 30% of the available eucalypts were one eucalypt, they weren't feeding on that eucalypt for 30%. They were shopping around. They had their favourites. Um, and of course, there's uh, different things that they're seeing over the year. Um, Now, this took place in the Blue Mountains, the ACT, Melbourne, and then outside of those three uh, areas, which is okay. Well, I think we've covered that. Uh, uh, so often when we think we have a problem, there's often lots of information around um, uh, to help solve uh, that issue. Um, one of the things we've talked about often, where we talk about planting in layers, is was it a couple of weeks ago where I said, try and have uh, if you got 3 layers minimum in your garden beds, try and have 7 species in each layer. And out of that, you're going to find that there's probably a bird, and if you're lucky enough, a mammal, that will want to use those plants, at least one or two of those plants in the layer. Um, Now, going back, I'm just trying to go back to keeping pests out, because that was where we started. Um, a lot of times people only notice pests or birds or animals that are um, undesirable in the garden in 2 places: one, where you're feeding them and or watering them, and two, if you are giving them like opportunities for things like nest boxes. So the obvious thing with nest boxes is, make sure you if you have pardalotes and you want pardalotes to nest, have the appropriate size box and the appropriate size entrance, the appropriate design to encourage those birds. If you have owlet nightjars and you have um, red rump parrots, or if you have turquoise parrots and you want to encourage them, or you have rosellas, give them appropriate nesting opportunities, and put things like anti-pest baffles. So this is where the designs are important, so that you don't get your nest boxes filled with Indian miners and starlings and house sparrows and tree sparrows if you don't want them. Uh, so I think that's kind of the best I can give you about that. At the food table, don't put out food that is predominantly going to bring in a pest species. The best way to feed your native species is, as we always bang on about, uh, by providing the food that nature intended. Um, Using a feed table encourages species you don't want, or encourages large numbers of species that would probably not occur in that concentration. Sulphur crested cockatoos in the city are a perfect example of that, and in the suburbs. Um, they will turn up for an easy feed because, of course, why wouldn't they? But you might be in a part of the city where there might normally only be a carrying capacity of 20 or 30 cockatoos, and all of a sudden you got 100, 150, 200. Um, Not good, not good. Um, Same with crows and ravens, and even magpies. People love having their Australian magpies around, but if you make it too easy for the magpies, and you get many, many more magpies than would normally occur in that area without supplemental feeding, um, they're keeping other things out. So, um, yeah, more is not necessarily better. Uh, and Charlie, yes, you are Thank you for bringing that up. I was going to mention this. I mention it all the time. If you are feeding uh, birds, or you have places where um, wild birds are coming into contact with your things, your tables, your chairs, your tabletops, your um, your dishes, your bowls, you've got a responsibility to reduce or stop the transmission, if possible, of um, of avian diseases and parasites. And our big problem that we've talked about many times on the show, uh, parrot beak and feather disease virus, and that is transmitted where birds are in close contact eating and drinking. Um, there's no cure for the birds, and if they are badly affected, uh, it can be a pretty gruesome existence for them before their death. So we really don't want that happening. Uh, Charlie, you are dead right. Do not feed mince to magpies. Uh, causes, uh, well, it doesn't cause a calcium deficiency, but it can lead to calcium deficiency because you don't have calcium in in the right proportion in the mince that you feed to magpies. And Charlie's right; it can cause metabolic bone disease, and it can also cause digestive issues uh, because mince is sticky and it can cause diseases in the beak and in the digestive tract of the birds that you're feeding it to. So kookaburras, magpies, currawongs, um, even birds like magpie larks, they will love mince if it's out there, but that's not what you should be feeding them. Uh, Live feed is what they should be getting. Um, I've talked about before that mealworms are a better option than mince, but mealworms are a worse option than things like bloodworms. But the best thing is that you maintain healthy foraging areas for those birds to forage naturally, um, providing habitat for insects and arthropods will mean your magpies can come in and eat. And this is what I meant before about the carrying capacity. Once people start feeding mince and bits of bacon, I remember one of my uncles used to love feeding magpies bacon because the magpies loved it. Not good for the magpies, but also, uh, I mean, I think when I was a little kid, he had sort of a pair of magpies and they would bring up one or two young. But over time, his magpie group turned into 10 or 12 magpies. That was way beyond the carrying capacity for around his place. And it was all based on supplemental feeding, cheese and stuff. And I I would often have these conversations with him about, I was a little kid and he's a guy in his 60s and professing to be a conservationist. And at heart, he was. But he had a really old school view of interacting with nature. And he never stopped. And I hope all those magpies were okay. But I also noticed too that as time went on, he had less fairy wrens and red-browed finches and thornbills in his garden. He would have pugnacious honeyeaters and magpies, and he liked interacting with them. But he wasn't really, to my mind, he wasn't really being very nature positive. Anyway, uh, okay, we got any broader questions today? I can feel my sniffly nose coming on, so I might be pulling the pin shortly. Um, Good to see you, Charlie. Too, by the way. Uh, I did miss last week, um, and I don't mean yes, I missed being here. I actually missed having the conversation with people. Um, so I am going to change the way I do things. I'm still going to do this spot, but I think I might add another um, spot, and I am going to try and bring a TikTok audience into this conversation and see if we can grow this little um, gardening Q&A a little bit. So I'm gonna tweak around with things. Uh, oh, this is a good one. Charlie's got a superb lyrebird at his place. Excellent. It is often digging up mulch in the early morning. It's great to watch, digging happily. So the magpies go out the front and pull worms. Yeah, they will prefer to pull worms and to get cockchafer beetle grubs. That's what they like, and getting crickets and things like that. That's what they like to do. Uh, and if you've got the superb lyrebird, that means it's going to be the vegetation cover is going to be a little bit denser in that area, and that's not what the magpies prefer. That's more currawong habitat and kookaburra and sort of sacred kingfisher, and even butcherbird browsing locations. So, uh, all of these birds have got niches, and uh, some of them are highly adaptable, uh, like the Australian magpie. But if it's competitors and it's the birds that are better adapted to a different vegetation cover are present, well, they'll use that spot. So yeah, it's one of the great delights, Charlie, of being in a sort of wild or wild-ish, wild adjacent location where you will get uh, those birds visiting and making use of your space. So uh, you're pretty lucky to have the lyrebird there. Have you heard it mimicking uh, any sounds which are unique to your place? Like, have you got a specific ringtone or a doorbell chime or something that or a car door, uh, noise that they get into? Uh, Charlie says the blackbird that is here, of course, a pest. However, it seems not to fight the other birds. Yet, um, look, blackbirds are invasive, but they fill a gap when when we don't have the other local birds that would displace them, like the Australian uh, the ground thrush, the russet-tailed or Bassian ground thrush, um, and things like pilot birds. Um, they they displace them. Uh, so um, blackbirds blackbirds like that dense cover, but they also need some of those uh, introduced plants, and they also love the way we do gardens with little bits of lawn and then little bits of garden beds. So um, they're they're highly adapted to the way we build our suburbs and our gardens. So um, so I think I think your observations are probably correct. That I think blackbirds are sort of the least problematic of some of the invasive species that we have for birds in suburban Australia, they're very, very quick to move in when we discourage the other birds. Um, actually, let me just pose a question. Um, I'll just see if how good the AI questioning is. Um, okay, so this is the broad fact sheet. Uh, European blackbirds will actively displace native species, but there is not a sort of side by side list of what they do displace. But because they are very territorial, as you will have noticed with the way they chase each other around, they take over real estate and they dominate food resources. So if those food resources are the birds that are the pest species in the garden that we've mentioned earlier on, they will dominate them and they will defend that space. So if we don't give the food that the blackbirds prefer, they're less likely to just expend all that energy to hang around. Um, because of the way they forage, they uh, they stop the natural recruitment of a lot of native plants. Right, they're scratching around. Um, so if you've got little native seedlings coming up, they scratch them up, get rid of them, and because they are consuming blackberries, ligustrums, uh, cotoneasters, they're acting as a seed vector all over the place. So the biggest problem for of having blackbirds is that they dominate real estate that they like, and they create real estate that they will like by dispersing seeds into those marginal blackbird areas over time, which is another reason why um, removing invasive weeds, if you see them and if they're starting to establish at your place, uh, do it and in your neighbours. Uh, so, yes, they degrade good habitat for other species by introducing weed species, and in habitat which is already degraded that suits blackbirds, they dominate and guard that real estate. So, uh, so I'm just having a look at what the suggestions are uh, for blackbirds to prevent them or manage them. Reducing access to nesting. Now, blackbirds love nesting in things like hedges. So most of those hedges are things like ligustrums, like privets. Uh, that's the stuff that they really like. So get rid of them. Uh, and modifying the food resources that are available over time can help to displace them. Blackbirds are here forever. They're never going away unless there's some insane amount of money put into eradicating them. But that would seem to that it would be better to modify the habitats back to support uh, eastern yellow robins and olive whistlers and pilot birds and scrub wrens and lyrebirds and satin bowerbirds, um, and try and naturally displace the European blackbird. So yeah. Okay. Well, that's. I think that's about all I've got for you today. Got the snotty nose coming back and the headache starting to manifest. So be another uh, quiet day, I think, in Nam for me. Uh, I will. I'm not going to say I will. I've got a lot of information ready to have available for all of you folks. I've just got to dress up um, the Patreon. It's going to be on Patreon, um, and we'll see how that goes. With so much of the changes that are happening in some of the social media spaces, I think I'm going to step away from some of them. It will depend. Will sort of depend how the revamp of the podcast and um, the guest interviews goes. Um, try and work on just going to try and work on what works. So habitat gardening will stay in the same time slot. I'll be adding another time slot for Q&A, and the second Q&A is going to be less Australian focused, and I've been seeing that there are lots of places around the world where there is very, very little information, this basic information about providing a native bird and animal friendly garden. So the second one will be a bit more general, but it might be good for people to come in and give uh, positive examples, and we just try and convert one person at a time, city by city, country by country, see if we can make a difference. Um, I'll be doing a bit more issues stuff this week, particularly about the response to the climate change uh, report and the some of the questioning in the Senate inquiry and some of what the government said, and see if I can pull some joy out of it. I didn't see too much of it. Um, so anyway, we'll see how we go. Charlie, thank you for keeping the conversation going. I hope there was a little bit of useful information there this morning. It's a difficult topic because once you got a pest, you're pretty much going to the pests are around. I mean, if they've made it to your area, it means they're around, and they're going to find something in the area that they like. The responsibility for you then becomes don't make it easier for them. And that's the way I see it is you don't want to make it easier for them. And if you can tilt the scales in favour of um, beneficial or desired species, well, have a crack at that. Um, there we go. Have a great weekend, bird nerds and habitat gardeners. There we are, Charlie. Oh, I'm nearly right. Thanks for popping in. I feared for a moment I'd be talking to no one because once you break the habit, people can stop turning up. Also, Charlie, I do need you to be thinking about YouTube. I know I keep saying it, but Facebook for the bird emergency will be going away. Um, some of the meta stuff that's going on, I just uh, can't deal with, and everything, nothing of mine gets shared on Meta. Like it never. It's like well, it's just like a death patch for this kind of material. Um, I'll persevere for as long as I can, but I don't want you to get caught out if the bird emergency suddenly disappears on Facebook. So yeah, do make sure you're on the YouTube or the Twitch if you don't want to do the YouTube. Twitch.tv, uh, because I'll be doing more live stuff there, and I think that's where the trivia will happen. Yeah, I probably shouldn't be talking about the trivia yet. That's a couple of weeks away. That'll be. I think I'll launch the trivia will launch in November, and then trivia will be a regular fixture, and we'll be doing that on Twitch and on Discord, I believe, and then posting those episodes into members area um, on Patreon, so people can brush up. And the plan is that I can actually get some good prizes together for Bird Nerd and uh, gardening, habitat gardening trivia over time. Uh, we'll just see how it works out. All right, enjoy your weekend. If you're a Collingwood supporter like me, go Magpies. Uh, it's always good this time of year. Collingwood always give you value into usually into the second or the third week of the finals. So that's always interesting. And then that stuff finishes up, and I can ignore sport again until cricket starts. So good stuff. Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, bird nerds. Thanks, gardeners. Do make sure you're subscribed to the Bird Emergency and also to the um, Habitat Gardening with Grant channel on YouTube. Um, Q&A will keep going to the Bird Emergency, but the specific gardening little videos and the plant profiles and things like that I'm working on at the moment will be going into the Habitat Gardening channel. So, and we'll just see how things shake out. Hooroo.